Hello, everyone. Today, we're going to cover an entire book of the Bible. The Book of Obadiah is just 21 verses, and it tells a story about God's people, the people of Judah, and the people of Edom. Both groups descended from the brothers Jacob and Esau, so surely they could treat each other like family, right? Actually, God sent a messenger with bad news for the people of Edom because of the way they treated his people. But the messenger had good news for God's people. We'll find out the bad news and the good news in today's lesson. In today's Bible story, Obadiah was the prophet God sent to deliver his message. Although God had chosen Obadiah for this job, Obadiah was not perfect. Is there such a thing as a perfect prophet? Actually, there is. His name is Jesus. Let's take a look at our new big picture question and answer. How is Jesus the perfect prophet? Jesus perfectly reveals God the Father and fulfills what the prophets spoke. That means Jesus shows us who God is, and he did everything God's messengers said he would do. Do you remember way back in the book of Genesis when we learned about Abraham's family? God had promised Abraham that his family would be so big, counting them would be like trying to count all the stars in the sky. Abraham had twin grandsons named Jacob and Esau. God chose Jacob to inherit the promise. Esau was jealous of Jacob, and the brothers fought. The people of Judah came through Jacob's family, and the people of Edom came through Esau's family. Now, even though these two groups of people were related, they did not treat each other like family. The Edomites mistreated God's people. So God sent a message through the prophet Obadiah. This message was bad news for Edom, but good news for Judah. Take a look.
God sent a message to Obadiah the prophet in a vision. God had news about a country called Edom. The people who lived in Edom were like brothers to the people in Judah. Both groups were descendants of Isaac's twin sons, Jacob and Esau. The people in Edom came from the family of Esau. God's people came from the family of Jacob.
The people of Edom didn't love God. They worshiped false gods. They lived in the mountains and trusted the mountains and their own strength to protect them. The people thought that they were better than everyone else.
The Edomites didn't get along with God's people in Judah. When the Babylonians took over the city of Jerusalem, the people in Edom just sat back and watched. They didn't try to protect Judah. The people of Edom even went into Jerusalem and took things that didn't belong to them. God said he was going to punish Edom.
Listen up, God said. Out of all the nations, you will be the least important. No one will like you. You were proud and I will punish you. You thought you were safe, but I will bring you down. Obadiah's message for the people of Edom was bad news. God was going to allow Edom's enemies to take away everything they had. Even the people who were their friends would steal from them. Many people would be killed.
God said to Edom, "You were cruel to the people in Judah, so you will be punished. When Judah needed your help, you stood back and did nothing. You laughed and were happy that they were attacked. Every bad thing you did to others will be done to you." The day of the Lord is near, Obadiah warned. Every evil thing you did to others will be done to you.
God said that the bad things that were happening to his people in Judah were only for a little while. God would deliver his people. But when I punish you, Edom, God said, everything will be destroyed. Obadiah's message from God had good news for God's people. My people will have the land that belongs to Edom, God said. God's people would return to their homes and God would take care of his people. But Edom's punishment was forever.
I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I often fought with my siblings. Now, it was one thing for me to argue with my sisters, but if someone else tried to be mean to them, that was a different story. No one else had better pick on my sisters. Edom was like Israel's older sibling. When the people of Judah faced Babylon, Edom should have helped Judah, but they chose not to. In the Book of Obadiah, we see that the nation of Edom was going to deal with the consequence of their choice to ignore Judah's trouble. God planned to punish them for their unfaithfulness. Obadiah's message for Edom was not happy news for the Edomites. They would have bad things happen to them, just as they had done bad things to Judah. But Obadiah's news was happy for the people of Judah. Though Edom failed to protect Judah, God would protect Judah. God was going to give Edom's land to Judah and make them a kingdom again. God promised to restore Israel and rule the earth as king. The book of Obadiah points to Jesus, the perfect prophet. Let's see how this story connects to him.
Like God's people were mistreated by the people of Edom, Jesus was mistreated by his own people. God will punish sin. Jesus died on the cross to take the punishment we deserve for our sin. We can trust Jesus to make wrong things right.
When we are joined with Jesus, we become part of God's promise to Abraham. We don't face the punishment our sin deserves, but instead, we are welcomed into God's kingdom forever. Our new key passage was written by another prophet named Jeremiah. Let's read Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11 together. I know the plans I have for you. This is the Lord's declaration. Plans for your well-being, not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope. Jeremiah's promise of a good plan was for the people of Judah, but we have similar promises through Jesus. God sent Jesus to die for us and make the way for us to be set free from our sin. When we trust in Jesus, we get to experience all the wonderful things God has planned for his people, including living with him forever in his perfect kingdom. In today's Bible story, God's people were mistreated. They needed help. The great news is that God promised to restore Israel and rule the earth as king. But there is great news for us as well. Like Judah, we are not perfect, but God invites us into his kingdom. It is humbling to know that God does not treat us as our sin deserves. Instead, he shows us mercy and grace. The mercy and grace he showed us at the cross is the best news we could ever receive. I'll see you next time.